Fantasy Stories Part 3. He started to stand up, but his knees were shaking so much he had to sit down again on the floor. He glanced behind him, thinking he could bolt back into the tunnel the way he had come. But the doorway had disappeared. There was now only a solid brown wall behind him. James' large frightened eyes traveled slowly round the room. The creatures, some sitting on the chairs, others reclining on a sofa, were all watching him intently. Creatures, or were they insects? An insect is usually something rather small, is it not? A grasshopper, for example, is an insect. So what would you call it if you saw a grasshopper as large as a dog? As large as a large dog? You could hardly call it that an insect, could you? There was an old green grasshopper as large as a large dog sitting directly across the room from James now. And next to the old green grasshopper, there was an enormous spider. And next to the spider, there was a giant ladybird with 9 black spots on her scarlet shell. Each of these 3 was squatting upon a magnificent chair on a sofa nearby, reclining comfortably in curled up positions. There were centipede and earthworm. On the floor over in the far corner, there was something thick and white that looked as though it might be a silkworm. But it was sleeping soundly and nobody was paying any attention to it. Every one of these creatures was at least as big as James himself, and in the strange greenish light that shone down from somewhere in the ceiling, they were absolutely terrifying to behold. "I'm hungry," the spider announced suddenly, staring head at James. "I'm famished," the old green grasshopper said. "So am I," the ladybird cried. The centipede sat up a little straighter on the sofa. "Everyone's famished," he said. "We need food." 4 pairs of round black glassy eyes were all fixed upon James. The centipede made a wriggling movement with his body as though he were about to glide off the sofa, but he didn't. There was a long pause and a long silence. The spider, who happened to be a female spider, opened her mouth and ran a long black tongue delicately over her lips. "Aren't you hungry?" she asked suddenly, leaning forward and addressing herself to James. Poor James was backed up against the far wall, shivering with fright and much too terrified to answer. And of course he couldn't answer there, and he was in fact trapped, and there were the insects there, and who were taking him as a victim, a prey, and they never knew the prey could be caught there, and it would certainly go along with that as well.